We were in a lot of trouble as youth. We were in a lot of trouble. We were in youth detention centers. We were wilding. We were wilding as young brothers in the inner city. Until we got knowledge of self. Until I got knowledge of self.
Who you choose to be your mate, who you choose to be your partner, who you choose to be intimate with has long-term repercussions on your life, because you are a parent forever. If you decide to be a parent, you don't stop being a parent. My name is Starr Armstrong. I am the founder of Clever Communities in Action. I am an advocate for the Black community, and I am also a Black woman raised by a single father from the ages of 12 to adulthood. Today we're going to have Wise, Intelligent, of Poor Righteous Teachers. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you, because for everybody who's been following you on social media, we see your relationship with your wife and your sons, and you give us all the feels and the positive vibes and everything about parenthood and fatherhood. So hey, I'm like, let's have this conversation. Who better to come to talk about fatherhood in our community? So you ready to do this? Peace.
Well, I guess so.
It's too late now. You gotta be ready. So first thing that I've done with all the guests, I'm creating your fatherhood profile right now. So I gotta get all up in your business. So I'm gonna ask you to give me we know your wise, intelligent name, age, your marital status for people who don't know, and how many children you have and what their genders are.
All right. First of all, I'm married. Of course, I've been married for 28 years.
Wow.
Now, married since I was 21.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's something like that. So I have two sons. I have a 26-year-old and a 12-year-old who will be 13 August 5th. Same marriage, children by the same wife. What else? What else did you ask?
I think you got it. You covered it all. You did it.
Right.
See, that's dope, and that's why I like having these conversations, because it's all about us controlling our own narrative. Because here we have a brother, long time in the hip hop community, married for this many years, children with the same woman, and we know Shay. Like everybody who's been following you very well, I feel like I know Shay. Like I don't know Shay, but I kind of know Shay. So, and that's the youngest one, the son too, the young son. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, the eldest son is 26 years old.
Wow.
He has a birthday coming up this month on the 20th. So, I mean, he predates my social media life, so that's why he's not as popular.
But he's doing great things. He slides in there every now and then too, and he's doing a lot of positive, phenomenal things as well. So, yeah, but Shay, he's in the social media time, so we've definitely been following his movement.
Right.
The next question I'm going to ask you is about your experience with your father. What was your experience like with your father, or your relationship with your father growing up, and how did that influence you as a parent?
Well, my parents separated when I was like 4 years old. So I don't have a lot of memories with my father. He separated when I was 4. They never divorced, but they stayed separated until their deaths. So and they there was no interaction between my mother and father until their deaths. So I never had a conversation. I never had a conversation with my father. I mean, I had one conversation with my father, and that was about 2 years before he passed away. And I was able to set up a camera and actually record it. I needed to record that conversation because I had never, talked to him. I mean, basic and simple things, like your favorite color, your favorite food, what books you read, I found out that he had a love for reading. He had books forever. He had so many books. He had a library of books and everything. And I didn't find that out until he passed away, after the funeral. So, my father wasn't in my life like that. You know, my father wasn't in my life. You know, I was raised primarily, you know, by my mother and my elder sisters. You know, and that was like, you know what that's like, growing up in the inner city, you know, in the projects. You know, we had a lot of street time. So the streets and my peers were pretty much the only male figures that I had in my life at the time.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So what I want to ask you as a result of that, obviously you are heavily involved in your children's lives. So what was it in you? Because I feel in these situations, a lot of times people go one way or the other. I didn't have a father figure, so therefore I was not able to be a father figure. Or they take that and it causes them to be present and phenomenal in their children's lives. So what was it in you that propelled you to be there despite not having that father figure?
I mean, yes. I mean, environment shapes behavior, you know, so yes, you know, not having a father around can influence you in positive or negative ways. However, that's going to depend on how you're oriented psychologically in that environment. You know, before getting knowledge of self, I mean, that's, you know, the nation of gods and earths, that kind of woke me up to the environment. You know what I mean? It let me understand the environment that we were in, what was necessary, what was needed, you know, how I got to be where I was, you know, and how we as a people got to be where we were, you know. So ask yourself certain existential questions will put you in a position where you have a point of reference. You have a different point of reference, a different set of point of references by which to interpret the reality that you're experiencing. So people respond differently based on how they interpret themselves in the reality that they're in. You know, so you can have two people in the same predicament, but you'll have two completely contrasting outcomes because of how they view themselves in the moment or in the experience. You know what I mean? And that's what happens a lot of times. You know, like for example, you know, we were in a lot of trouble as youth. We were in a lot of trouble. We were in youth detention centers. You know, I lived in a homeless shelter. You know, we were wilding. We were wilding as young brothers in the inner city, you know, until we got knowledge of self, until I got knowledge of self, you know, but my brothers were in the same predicament and my sisters were in the same predicament. However, some of us came to a certain knowledge of self and start to see ourselves differently in the experience and changed, you know, and started making different decisions, while some of us didn't. You know, so you have children from the same mother and father sharing an experience, but having 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 completely contrasting results based on how they begin to see themselves in the experience, you know. I mean, I have brothers who have spent, you know, years in prison, you know, and I have sisters. My sister's a maternal fetal medicine physician. I mean, there's only like 7,500 of them in the country.
Wow.
You know, and she, you know, and she had the same experiences. So it's all about how you interpret yourself in that reality, but that interpretation will be based on your perception, you know, and whatever controls your perception a lot of times will determine how you respond to the situation. So, developing your own perspective on the reality is important.
True. You dropped a lot of jewels right there. Definitely, no doubt, because we've all seen what you said play out. Definitely. So next, I want to know, as far as being a father, what are some of the most challenging aspects of fatherhood that you have experienced?
Most challenging aspects of fatherhood. For me, I'm a pretty much, I'm a hands-on, hands-off kind of parent. So, you know, I like to believe in what I'm teaching.
Okay.
So I like to trust what I'm teaching. So if I give you the information, whether it's a moral lesson or an academic lesson, I like to trust that, you know, if you show me that you have the understanding, then I can take my hands off the situation. You should be able to make the decisions you need to make, you know, once you know right from wrong, once you can recognize a clean glass of water versus a soiled glass of water, you know. So the challenging thing for me, I would say the most challenging thing has been homeschooling.
Okay.
homeschooler has been the most challenging aspect of parenting for me right now, because of my schedule and how busy I am, and making sure we get the lesson plans in.
Yeah, I'm sure that takes a lot of discipline and time management skills there, but you have like some serious equations and lessons, and I know Shay has to be like light years ahead as a result of that, because sometimes I'm scratching my head like,
it's interesting. He's correcting me now. Now he's correcting me. He's like, no, that's not right. It's like, no, that's not right.
That's great. That's great. But I love it. And it's a great example, even with what the challenges may be. It's good to see that, and it helps our community understand that it can be done. And it's just one of those things, like you said, being technologically challenged. I won't say I'm the most savvy, and I can even say sometimes it gets on my nerves, but it does help us with being able to control our narrative in a way that we haven't been able to do that before. So even things like posting his homeschool, how much of a positive effect that's having on our community. Yeah. So we talked about the challenge. What are some of the most rewarding aspects of fatherhood that you've experienced?
Seeing my sons accomplish something that they set out to do, or seeing them entering a new phase of learning and gaining a serious command of the subject matter. When that happens, that's very fulfilling. And simple things. Sometimes it's the simple things, like when we enter in a restaurant and Shay'll go and he'll hurry before everybody else to open the door, to hold the door for his mother and everybody else, and whoever else is coming in. If it's other patrons of the restaurant coming in, he'll hold the door till everybody gets in. Those simple things. Those things let me know that I'm doing what I set out to do. So those are the moments.
Awesome. Yeah. So also, as a hip hop artist, and we know that our culture has like a myriad of, I don't know, like just. Hold on a second. I thought my phone was on Do Not Disturb, but it was not, so I had a call coming in. But, the culture has a lot of different aspects to it. And you've been in the culture, like actively in the culture for some time now. Has hip-hop had an influence on you as a father in any type of way?
Oh, yes, I'm a hip-hop dad. I'm a hip-hop dad. I rap lesson plans. I rap what's going to be for breakfast and what's going to be for dinner. We have rhyme battles around the house, just on general principle. So, yes, hip-hop has influenced everything that I do, in a lot of ways. I like the fact that hip-hop allows us to be ourselves in whatever we're doing, whether it's business, whether it's learning. We can get past traditional structures through hip hop. Hip hop has always, shunned the traditional power structure and created its own platforms and way of manifesting itself. So that's the thing that has influenced me as a father. The curriculum is how we dress. The curriculum is the music we listen to. The curriculum is the culture. The culture is the curriculum, and that's how we like to function. So yes, hip hop influenced me greatly as a father. It goes without saying for me.
Right. And so we in the culture understand that, but I feel, I have a wide spectrum of people who follow me on Facebook. So I think it's good to hear that, because when you're a part of the culture, you understand that. I feel everything that you're saying, but I think it's good for other people to be able to hear, because, sometimes our, older parts of the community or whatever may think that hip hop is all negative, or that it can't have any positivity to it. But I totally get what you're saying. And I think that's a really great light to shed about how hip hop and just like you said, is us, and the rebellion in it, the dress code, the way we do things. So yeah, I'm definitely feeling that. Does Shay spit?
He can freestyle every now and then. He'll freestyle every now and then. He Millie rock a lot.
Okay.
he merely rock. We be merely rocking around the house or whatever, you know. So it's all good. But again, you know, it's perception though. The old head, you know, perception of hip hop is a created perception, created by those who control the social machinery for mass public opinion manipulation. You know, so major corporations, major radio, major television, you know, the major corporations are controlling the perception of many people. So hip hop is only negative in the context of mainstream platforms. So if you're getting your cues on what hip hop is or isn't from mainstream, of course you're going to have a negative perception of hip hop, just like you have a negative perception of black people in general.
Yeah. So, and so that's the work that we do to, you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this Conversations with Father series, because the last statement that you made, if the mainstream, if you're not, you know, elevating your mind and looking beyond that, and you allow that to define your reality for you, then you'll believe that all black men don't take care of their kids, and, you know, these statements that we hear such as that. So I'm here to talk to men who I know and some who I don't, who I know are active fathers in their children's lives. As I've said before, I was raised by my dad by himself from when I was 12 to adulthood. So this is something that is very near and dear to my heart, because, you know, my dad has been around. My mom told me ever since she knew that she was expecting that he was excited. But when I went to live with him by myself, I started to kind of notice that people seemed to feel that was strange. Or when I got a little older and I look back at things, I was like, wait a minute. So I really have pushed to tell this story from the perspective of black fathers. And when I got older, I realized the hero that he was for taking on his daughter by himself at that age and doing it, and how many fears he may have had inside, you know, just all kind of feelings that I didn't know when I was that young, because he didn't allow me to know it. He just was doing it. But I'm like, I'm an adult now, so I'm thinking behind the scenes what may have really been going on through his head. So that's why this is really an important topic to me, because black men have been part of my upbringing in positive ways.
Right. Shout out to your father. I mean, he did an outstanding job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would not be the same person had it not been for him. And then in addition to that, my uncles, you know, my blood uncles, and then my uncles by marriage. I just have had black men, and then I grew up to have black men in my life who are friends, who are just positive. I mean, so this story had to be told. And in addition to that, I'm sure you've seen some of the things on YouTube and Facebook and the blogs or whatever now, where it seems to be a lot of strife between black men and black women. And I'm also like, we can't do this without each other. If we are about the advancement of our communities and that's priority, then we can't do that without each other. Black fathers matter, black mothers matter, the black community, the black family, all of that. So that's why I'm here doing this. So,
absolutely necessary work.
Thank you. So back to you. Let's talk about your wife. We also get to see her and you guys' relationship on here, which is very awesome and inspiring as well. So what role does she play, and how has she influenced you as a father?
Oh, wow, you name it. I mean, you name it as far as roles go. I mean, she's a superhero. She's a real life superhero. You know what I mean? She's Storm in real life.
That's what's up.
She can save a life, and she's a shooter too. So
yeah, we've seen that.
I mean, yeah, she's great. I mean, she's great. She's been great, you know, and I mean, she's a warrior. You know, she's a warrior. She has lupus. I don't know if you know heard about that, or if you know that, but she does. She got on with lupus for about 10 years now. But I mean, she winning. You know, she's winning.
No doubt.
You know, and you know, she compliments me. You know, she's a great compliment. You know, to my fire. We're both Aries, so it's a lot of fire.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But she compliments me well in a lot of ways. I mean, for example, I'm gonna give you a real life example. a story. When I was younger, about 19 years old, when we first met, when she met me, I was always with my crew. You know what I mean? I was always with my crew. It was just me and a bunch of other 5% brothers, from the projects, and we would be on our particular corner all the time. We would be on our corner. And she was in college. She was 19 years old. I was 20. And she would drive up in her car and get me off the block. Right off the block in Divine Land. Like, she would pull up, I'd jump in the car, pull off. And she saved me from a lot of BS. Just coming to get me from the projects when she would. You know what I mean? So, she's always been right there for me, man. She helped change my perspective a lot on life. I mean, it helped me consider what was important, in a lot of ways, and I'm forever indebted to her for that.
Shout out to Lotus, April. Yes, that's great. That is wonderful. And you were smart enough to jump in the car and go with her.
Right. You know what I mean? Right. Now, unlike the meme, she didn't have to be butt naked for me to stay home, not go out with my homies.
Right.
And today, you know what I mean? It's like, I prefer hanging out with her than I do any of my homies. You know what I mean? Any of the brothers that I prefer hanging out with her. You know what I mean? Even if I'm going to see a fight, if I'm going to see it to a sports event, I prefer to do it with her than anybody else. It's just what it is.
Awesome. So how has fatherhood changed you?
Well, it's changed me a lot. It's developed in me a sense of urgency around establishing my legacy and an estate, to an inheritance and things of that nature, and making sure all of that is in order. So it's changed me in that regard. I don't feel like time is on my side all the time anymore. When in your youth, you're like, I got time.
Yeah.
I got time, but when you become a parent, from a father, and you look, the goal of every grandfather is to leave an inheritance to his grandchildren, not just the father to his child, but the goal of every father is to leave an inheritance to his grandchildren. You know what I mean? So that's how I'm thinking now. So it's changed my trajectory into a long-term trajectory. I'm thinking in the long term now, and I've delayed gratification so much now, to where I can really focus on the things that matter. It made me understand the proverb that life is better when old men realize that they must plant trees whose shade they'll never get to sit under. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm planting those trees now, knowing that it's not for me to enjoy the shade. It's for generations that are succeeding, to enjoy. So that's where I'm at. That's how it's changed me.
Yeah, that's so important. That's a way that all of us should be thinking and living. So yeah, that's a good proverb there. Let me see. What do you have? Do you have any words that you would say to men who are not active in their children's lives?
I don't know the reasons for them not being active in their children's lives, so it's really hard for me to kind of do a broad analysis or make a broad statement around that, because, it's so many different dynamics. Sociology is never an exact science. We can't apply one rule to all of the people all the time, so if you can be in your children's life, be in your children's life. It's of paramount importance to be in a child's life, even if it's not your child. If you're in a relationship with a sister and she has children, try to be in their lives the best that you can, in any way that you possibly can. Even children around your way. If you see a mother or a family that's struggling somewhat with their children, or need their children to have some other associates and exposure to some other people, ideas, and perspectives. Try and fill in where you can. The children need people. They need human communication, real human communication. You know what I mean? Communication that expands their consciousness and exposes them to greater realities.
Yeah, that's so important, because one of the things that it's so important for children. People say boys a lot of times, but boys and girls to have positive male figures in their lives. I've been pushing for years to get black male mentors within my program. So yes, please fill in, definitely with your own children, but also in the community. The black male presence is definitely needed. The society at large, we say that the mainstream tries to say something different, but everybody, we all have to understand that as men and women, the black male presence is definitely needed in our community. So don't dim your light, and don't think that because you're not balling out of control or this, that, or the third, that your presence is not important to the building and strengthening of our community. So definitely that. Let's see. What else do I want to ask you? I want to ask you this. So we see a lot of our community is going in a lot of different directions. I'm still a believer that there's a lot of positivity going on in our community. We just don't always, like you said, we rely on mainstream media and we don't see it all the time. But 40 years from now, how would you like to see the state of the black community? Like, if you could write a book, if you were the author of 40 years from now, how would you like for things to be?
40 years from now is not a lot of time. It's not a lot of time. And I base that on the fact that it's only been 50 years since we've had full citizenship in this country, and have been able to move around in this country.
You want 100?
Somewhat freely.
You want 100 years?
But I'll take the 40.
Okay.
I'll take the 40. In 40 years, I would like to see us developing a group social theory around the public school systems in predominantly black communities. One that's centered in African history and experience, and culture. Because that would streamline our children into a collective social theory for the benefit of the group. You know what I mean? It would, and that's what I think is important right now for us. We have no collective social theory. So it's even hard for us to even speak in terms of a community when a community is rooted in something common. And there's not really anything common amongst these so-called black communities beyond black skin and oppression. So we need to streamline the psychology around a collective social theory, rooted in culture. So if the culture changes at the public school level, where the reason I choose that point, that fighting position right there, the public school system, is because our children are there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So they're there more of their time than they are with their parents throughout the week. So we need to deal with that as the vantage point from which we should start with our movement towards a collective social theory, and that can begin with from a cultural standpoint. We already wearing uniforms. Why not African-centered the uniforms? Let's get some mud cloth, some kente cloth, and what that would do in turn, if all the predominantly black public schools adopted an African-centered attire for the children to wear, what that would do is that would create an exchange between black people in America and the west coast of Africa, Ghana, Senegal, and places like that, Nigeria, where we can get textiles from for these institutions, and that will create a textiles industry overnight. And then we get some of these black clothing manufacturers here in the United States to manufacture these uniforms using these textiles. And then we're creating a textiles industry. We're creating business. We're employing people all around culture, and we're educating youth, And when we look, again, culture, if we employ like the music classes in schools. You know, there's no music in schools no more. They've taken the instruments out of schools, put the instruments back in schools, add some African instruments, some djembes, some akanindes and doodle bows and whatever else. You know, some kinkanays, some shakerays in the school system, and that again creates an exchange between black people in the United States and the culture on the west coast of Africa, and it creates economy and sustainability at the same time. You know, so I think that's a good place to start at the level of school system. You know, think about it. If we did that, all of our black scholars would then be employed to write the curriculums. They would be writing curriculums. They would be writing history books. They would be writing textbooks for the education of these children based on African history and experience, or the history of the world from an African-centered perspective. You know what I mean? In other words, putting their history and experience at the center of the reality. And that's what the education must be based on in order for us to gain some ground, you know, as a people in this predicament.
So that's a dope idea. It makes perfect sense. You got Brandon Steele saying wise for president 2020. So let me ask you this, and I don't want to put this all on you, because I know a lot of times I'm always like, if you care about our struggle, then critical thinking is required, effort is required. But because that's such a dope idea and people are listening to this and more people might hear it later, if a person was interested in doing that and implementing that, do you have like a first step that somebody that people would undertake to get that going? Like as far as getting the school system to be African centered and our curriculum uniting under these principles and making sure our predominantly black schools have that. Who would you suggest is the first, or what are the first steps? Who do you go to demand this? What do the people have to get together in order to implement this?
Right. That's a good question. I mean, like I always say, sometimes someone might be good at diagnosing the problem, but not necessarily the person that should be treating the problem.
I feel you.
I
definitely understand that.
I'm not sure. However, I will say this, that the first steps have been made. It's just that there hasn't been any follow through on some of those steps.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, in New Jersey, there was an act passed called the Armstrong Act. The state passed what they called the Armstrong Act, which was an act that was set up to provide African-centered or African history in the curriculums of public schools. However, there was no follow-through on it. You know, so the black superintendents need to be questioned or changed. You know, because the Armstrong Act existed, and we could have used that to pivot from. We could have pivoted on that particular act to infuse African-centered education in the curriculum under that premise. You know, and I see in the comments, my brother Baye Kemet just put the Council of Independent Black Institutions, CB, which is an organization that was created by Baba Hannibal Afrique out of Chicago, which is a network of African-centered schools. These people are genius. You know, Baye Kemet and his wife Makita Kemet, they started an African-centered independent school called the Garvey School.
I follow them.
Che attended the Garvey School, you know, and they're like family. That's the way the school is. Everyone who attends the schools are like family. All of the schools, all of the CB institutions, you know, and those people, they exist, but nobody's tapping them. You know, nobody's tapping them with all this knowledge and information they have around African history and experience, you know, and culture, you know, which is paramount to our getting out of this predicament that we're in or solving these problems, you know. So the people exist that can create the change, or that can initiate the change. It's just that we have to get the superintendents on board, or elect superintendents who are African-centered and understand what's at stake.
Boom. So linking these chains. So it's a couple of jewels to unpack right there from what you said. So in Jersey, and obviously a lot of the viewers who know you are in Jersey, following through with the Homicide Act, like, I don't know, coming up with a petition and showing up at these school board meetings and everything and pushing, because if it's there, then they need to be held accountable for enforcing it. So that's a starting point of getting numbers of people to, you know, demand that is followed through with. And then what you said about the CIBI, which I follow the Garvey School, Brother Bay Kemet and his wife, and I love what they're doing. I saw back when Shay was attending that school, and we have that. You know, I just left Flint, and they have a school that is African centered there, and that's where we donated our books this year. In Virginia, we have schools like that. In Atlanta, we have schools like that. So I guess, you know, utilizing, helping to propel what's already here, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, and linking those chains, and then the follow through, like you said, that, because the tasks are so big, but we do have the people, but making sure that we follow through. Because you answered my question in such a great way, and everybody's like, yeah, that was a great idea. So I'm just trying to throw some tangibles out there for people who really feel that it's a great idea. Some of the things you can go and do to help make that idea a reality.
Right. Donate to independent schools.
Yes.
Just like you donated the books. You know, donate to the independent schools of your community. They exist. I mean, you have people, you know, I hear people all the time on the internet saying, we need our own schools. I mean, there's like 40 African-centered schools attached to CB across the country, you know, and people are like, we need our own school. They already exist. You know, Dr. Umar with his campaign to build a school or set up his own African-centered school. It's like, you know, okay, they're like, yo, where's the money at? He raised X amount of money. My thing was, you know, he's a great fundraiser if he could raise that kind of money, but he don't have to invent a new school. He don't have to. We don't need to open another school.
Right.
If he'd have took and distributed throughout the CB schools, then you know how far that money could have went. I've seen CB institutions do wonders with $1,000.
I know all about that.
Right.
I know all about that.
$750,000. You know, just imagine, you know, what they could do with that kind of money, you know. So, yeah, I mean, we just have to, you know, focus on us, look inward more than we look outward.
Yeah. So, and a good thing to do would be to exhaust, to look up and find out the independent and African-centered schools in your area or near you that you can support already. And one of the things that I've been talking to people about, and I'm going to go harder on this coming up, when it comes to our independent schools and organizations or entities that focus on our community, that are not shying away from saying that they prioritize our community, please donate. And even if you decide that you're going to do, you know, $5 a month or 10 or 20, whatever your threshold is. But we have this thing called social media. And between the amount of friends we have up here, if everybody, even half of them, were giving $5, $10 a month, think of the difference that could make consistently, right, what would be coming in. But we're just not utilizing the resources that we have, because we throw away $5 and $10 at white establishments and institutions all the time without thinking about it. So I don't think it would be much to say that if you had a $25 budget per month that you were going to divvy up between schools or organizations, even you know, when you talk about superintendents or people who are going to run, and they have said that they are going to prioritize the interests of our communities, put that money, like, come up with your budget and how you going to divvy that out toward it, because it takes money to make this happen, like the likes and the retweets and the shares. That's really great. It costs money to make all these things happen when we click like and love on all of this hard work that people are putting into changing this trajectory.
Absolutely. I do this thing called Kool-Aid Facts. I'm sure you've probably seen it on the internet. You know, and one of the recent Kool-Aid Facts was where I posed that same reality. I said, if, you know, take the 5%, the Nation of God's a Nurse, for example. You're a member of the Nation of God's a Nurse. You know, I know there's like 100,000 proclaimed 5%ers in the United States. Whether you calling it NGE or a lost 5%, there's like 100,000 people with the names, with the lessons, and the peace, God, peace, earth, psychology.
Right.
$1 a month from 100,000 people. $1 a piece. That's $100,000 a month. $1.2 million a year. You can create and build any kind of institutions you want with that kind of capital. With so little people just pooling those resources. $1 though. If I see homeless people all the time, and I give them $2, $3, $5, $10, whatever's in my pocket. Sometimes I give it to them. $1 a month. We don't even got to talk about trust. Then people be like, "Oh, what about trust?" $1 though. $1. You talking trust around $1?
Right.
$1 a month. I will give you $12 for the year right now.
Right now.
Out of my pocket.
Right now.
And not even ask you. I don't care if you go and buy a yacht with that money. I don't care if you take that $12 and buy yourself some new Jordans. I do not care. It's $12. I'm not sweating you about trust over $1 a month. It's not gonna happen. And then you take the nation of gods and earths and you multiply that by how many other formations we have in the black community. Whether it's the African-centered community, the Pan-African community, the Hebrew Israelite community. You have all these communities. If they just focus on just the members in your community, give up $1 a month.
I say every community, all of our communities, even the black church, like that indictment needs to be there. Like all the members, $1. Like, okay, so do your tithe to the church, but then take $1 and put it toward our communities. And like you said, it's no sweat. But even if you are concerned about the integrity of where your dollar is going, we just said it's a whole bunch of organizations and things going on that you see the work. You got people that are showing the work, so you don't even have to feel funny if you give it to these institutions that we're talking about. CB, other independent schools, Clever Communities in Action, in my area, Black Brand, Wear Black Biz. Like, these people show their work, so you don't even have to feel funny about giving away that dollar. So we have to eliminate the excuses and kind of understand the power that we really do have. So I hope if this is resonating with anybody, that you do make an effort to say that you'll just roll out your 12 right now, or that you're going to do a recurring donation to these particular organizations or institutions, and start dropping your contact information in the comments. If you know of independent schools, if you know of black organizations that are doing work to advance our communities, drop them in here and then make a commitment to support. And then you can pop your collar, your chest and everything, and because it helps. It helps. It really does help.
Absolutely. It's compound interest. People don't understand it's like compound interest. It might look like a small amount, but when it's a lot of people involved and all of us getting involved, it adds up and it goes a long way. It's a lesson. That compound interest thing is important. That's something that I teach Che all the time. And my eldest son, for example, I asked Che if I offered him a job to work for me, and I offered to pay him $1 a day for 30 days, or I would give him a penny that doubled every day for 30 days. Which one would he take? The first impression is to take the $1 a day. $30. I'm gonna get $1 a day. That's more than a penny. But if that penny is doubling, when you do the math on that penny doubling every day, 1 penny, 2 penny, 4 pennies, 8 pennies, by end of 30 days, you're going to have over $2 million. Think about that. That's compound interest, and that's how it works. Every little bit counts. That's why the stock market is so valuable in the long term, because people are like, the compound interest is what counts. It adds up. So yeah, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes some effort. It takes people to commit to it and get it done.
Yes, no doubt. So we are excuseless when it comes to that for most of us. I don't know everybody's situation, but a lot of us, we know that we have $5, $1 that we can give toward the cause. That we're excuseless when it comes to that, and everybody doesn't have the ability to be the one doing the work all the time because of other life obligations and whatnot. But that $1, that $5, whatever you decide, then you definitely are contributing to the cause and moving things forward. So that was a much needed. We kind of veered off of fatherhood a little bit there, but I think that was something that was very, very important to put out there and discuss. So I'll just ask you at this point, is there anything else that you would like to say in regards to fatherhood and your fatherhood journey or fatherhood in the Black community in general?
Yeah, I mean, let's not let mainstream media or our immediate surroundings dictate for us what our reality is as a group. Let's try not to superimpose our perceptions of ourselves and the people around us in our immediate circles onto the group. If you think something should be happening in the community that you don't see happening in your community, make it happen, or either move to a community where it's happening at and be a part of it. Because things are happening, great things are happening in the Black community all the time. And a lot of times we project our own experiences onto the group. And that's not the reality. I mean, we act as if we're not doing anything. We act as if nothing's being done. We act as if there are no bright spots. And it's not even a matter of bright spots. There's a lot of good going on. Like, for example, we talk much about gang banging. We talk much about, violence in the community. But when we get right down to the mathematics of it, less than 6% of young Black males in the Black community between the ages of 16 and 24 are engaged in any violent criminal activity.
Say that.
Less than 6%. So that less than 6% don't represent the group. But we always posting these memes and video clips of the violence and asking ourselves what's wrong with the Black community? Why is it so much violence in the Black community? But shouldn't we be reflected by the 94% that's not engaged in the criminal activity? That's the group. That other 94%. Even when you look at the prison industrial complex, over 75% of those in prison are in prison for non-violent criminal activity. Yeah. So why are we in these spaces and places around Black people doing certain things? We're always taking this, this small group and superimposing it onto everybody. And that degradation, that perception is very dehumanizing, it's very criminalizing, and it causes self-hate. It breeds self-hate. It creates it, and it fosters anti-Blackness across the board, anti-Africanness, or however you're coming, but that's what it does. And we have to realize that and check it, because it's not the reality. It's not true.
Yeah, it's imperative that we control our own narrative. Like, that is so important, and that we think beyond what is shown by other people about us. Like, you have to go beyond that. And I mean, it's critical thinking. I've seen so many wonderful pictures in my timeline this week of our youth graduating from high school. And this included, our boys. And you see that, and like you said, you hear the numbers that you put up there, but then you'll go and see something on television and fall into that lull that, all our youth are bad and they just doing everything wrong.
Right. It's amazing, because one negative act or one small negative act represents the entire group, but the small positive act doesn't. Why? You know what I mean? It's like Bob Johnson's $1 billion success wasn't superimposed onto the group. They didn't say we were all genius.
Right.
They didn't say,
Selective. It's very selective.
Right. But if Bob Johnson would have beat his wife, if Bob Johnson was accused of beating his wife or cheating on his wife, then that would be superimposed on all Black people. Black men are just negative, and this is what they're into, or something negative that, like, they post the pictures, the clips all the time of unseemly behavior acted out by Black women, and they superimpose it onto all Black women. I'm like, yo, wait a minute. That can't be the case. But we be in these spaces and places all the time where we take the negative behavior and superimpose it onto the group, but the positive behavior, we keep that contracted to the individual. And that's that's kind of whack to me. But yeah, last words in terms of fatherhood. I mean, to get really deep into fatherhood and black men and their children, we can't have conversations, fully in-depth conversations about fatherhood without having conversations about the black man-woman relationship,
right?
In terms of intimate space and relationships in that way, and we need space to talk about that, and I mean, and talk about it and intellectualize it, right, outside of our emotions, and whatever our experiences have been with a black man or a black woman, because we do that too. We'll superimpose our relationship experience with a man or a woman onto the group, when that might have just been that's your experience, so we have to deal with that too. We have to get into that conversation. We need to have that conversation, and that's a whole plethora of conditionings and psychological profiles around that one thing. So
it's a lot. It's a conversation that I'm looking at doing next. It actually would have to be a series, because there's no way that it could just be
no way one in 40 minutes to an hour.
Yeah,
it's impossible to get. I mean, even a series, because it's a lifetime work. It's a lifetime of work. It's something that has to be sustained. It has to be a sustainable conversation, because the conversation helps people respond to the reality. So we have to keep that conversation going, in a positive direction. But that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to deal with that because, first and foremost, we're under the perception that there's only one relationship construct. There's only one family construct that's viable and acceptable under whose value system, So the black man, black woman relationship is being interpreted within the context of European relationship and marital values, which we're going to lose by default. We're going to lose in that paradigm by default. So we have to understand that we're functioning within Judeo-Christian European marital construct all the time, and it's being enforced on everybody. We grew up with that reality, so it's our conditioning. It's what we believe. Those are the values. So until we address those values and their shortcomings, we're gonna have a hard time moving forward in relationships with each other, because we're stuck on these European values and we're trying to enforce an impossible paradigm on people.
And we need an overhaul, like where we establish our values, period. Because from pretty much everything that we're doing is coming from that European perspective. And so when you're striving to be something that you inherently are not, you're going to fail. You're going to continue to be frustrated, and you're going to continue to be down on yourself and people who look like you, because you're trying to do something that is impossible. If I, get mad at myself because I'm not being successful at flying, like literally me flying, to the next town or whatever, then, it's just not possible. I'm not capable of flying myself, that way. And I will continue to be upset and tell myself I'm incapable, I'm not good, I just can't get it right. So I have to, okay, Starr, so what are ways that you can get there? The way that make that realization. So we have to redefine and overhaul and set our own values and standards for ourselves, period. And it starts in the home. So having this conversation as, the mother, the father, having it with our children and our family members and everything, it starts right there. So thank you so much for taking the time out to have this conversation. Before we go, what are you up to right now? What projects are you working on? Where can we find that?
I have the 5th period in my 7 CD box set called Back to School, coming out soon. It's called Ponzi. I'm looking to release it the end of next month. I may push it back to August because I got so many other things going on. One thing in particular, the Boss Up entrepreneurship programs that we're launching through the Rap Snacks Foundation, which I am the president of. I'm the president and executive director of the Rap Snacks Foundation, which is spearheading a lot of community initiatives to empower youth in the community through entrepreneurship and business development. Control the product, control the culture.
Yeah.
And that's what we're pushing through Rap Snacks right now. So that's been consuming a lot of my time. And of course, I'm homeschooling, being a parent and a husband.
That's a lot. That's a full plate. That's a couple of full plates right there. Well, thank you, Wise. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. You can find out a little more about my movement at clevercommunities.org. And definitely, continue to follow Wise to find out when he's dropping his good music on us and support what he has going on. Keep dropping the things in this comment section about what we were talking about, different schools and organizations that can be supported. And again, thank you, Wise, for giving us your fatherhood journey perspective and all your insight as a father and a father in the hip-hop community and all that good stuff.
Thanks for having me. You're welcome anytime. You know what I mean?
Appreciate it.
Let's keep it.
All right. Y'all take it easy. Peace.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Peace.